a force to be reckoned with. It was a private exercise. You had Islamist parties, you had the Brotherhood, of course, in Egypt and in Syria, but it wasn't a political force yet. And what propelled it forward were the trend lines that developed after 1979. Today, I think that after 40 years, the appeal of religion in the Middle East is waning to some extent. You have increasing numbers, I think a majority of young Arabs and Muslims who say that religion plays too big a role in their life and they want to see a lesser role, particularly in the politics and in the everyday life. It's not an oxymoron to say, or it's an oxymoron to say secular Muslim. A lot of the characters in my book, through whom I tell the story, are devout, they pray, they fast, they go to the mosque, but they are very progressive in their outlook on life, on culture, on society, and they believe in the separation of church and state, or mosque and state, if you will. On your other question about Musa Sadr, this was reported in Kai Bird's book, The Good Spy. It was also in Andrew Scott Cooper's book, Fall of Heaven, and this is based on their reporting. So this is my secondary source. It's based on my reporting and some private conversations in Lebanon as well.
Yes, we have another question from the audience.
We answered all the questions.
Yes, sir. And then I see a hand all the way back.
Thank you. Almost every revolution starts with a leader. Can you identify, are there potential leaders for change in Iran in particular who are able to survive?
That's the key. That's the key question. Within the country, I don't see any that are able to come forward. But very often you don't see them until the last minute. A lot of people didn't realize at the time that Khomeini would emerge as the ultimate leader of this movement, particularly because he was in exile in Najaf, forgotten, in an alley. He didn't have exposure to international media and so on, even though he was very popular with his followers. But the secular, modernist, leftist, and Islamist modernist activists around them were really at the forefront and thought that they were using him to rally the masses and get people from the mosques out into the street. And it ended up that he was, in essence, using them. And he had often indicated that all he wanted was to retire under an apple tree in Qom, which, ended up not being true. But another what-if moment is when, Khomeini ends up going to Paris for those last 3 months of his exile. The media exposure he got there was essential in galvanizing the opposition, the revolution, and in giving him the platform to lead this movement to its fruition and to its culmination with his return to Afghanistan, to Tehran. And while doing that, not only did his acolytes push aside people like Musa Sadr, but then within Iran, they're also ruthless in pushing aside other clerics who were a potential challenge to Khomeini. And now you see, within Iran, so many leaders of the Green Movement are still under house arrest. Others other potential leaders are in exile, but you really never know until you're in the middle of it and you see these people emerging, who might be a leader at the crucial time.
I saw a hand all the way in the back row, I think. Yes, please. You can stand and just identify yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Amy Shank. I'm from IISS Americas. I have a quick question about kind of moving forward, looking at the receding of the Black Wave. If you foresee any future collaboration or de-escalation efforts between Saudi and Iran, given the current state in which security issues are arising, not necessarily nuclear, but specific JCPOA in the context of the JCPOA, but also missile and cyber defense between Saudi Arabia and Iran moving forward. If you foresee with this Black Wave receding any future collaboration or conversation between the two nations?
I think there are a lot of efforts for de-escalation whenever there is a rise in tension. You know, after the attack against the oil facilities in Abqaiq in Saudi Arabia in September of last year, there was a move towards indirect talks between the Saudis and the Iranians through the Iraqis and the Pakistanis. So no one really wants a full-out war, and the Saudis are worried that although President Trump says he's their ally, he doesn't necessarily put his money where his mouth is. So there was a lot of heat, a lot of rhetoric after that attack in September, but there was not a lot of fire, if you will. There was not a lot of tangible reassurance for the Saudis. There was no action. Eventually, the Americans did send more troops to the region, but the Saudis feel a little bit worried, I would say, which is why they're looking for ways to de-escalate. And the same calls for de-escalation also happened after Qasem Soleimani was killed, because the Saudis again didn't want to go to full-on war. I think it's important to remember that the Saudis and the Iranians have often found their way to détente and rapprochement in the past, so it's not impossible going forward. In the 90s there was flourishing relationship between Khatami and the King of Saudi Arabia. They exchanged visits. There were security cooperation agreements. What I think makes it difficult now is that Mohammed bin Salman is not necessarily in a compromising mood, and he also doesn't trust the Iranians. He doesn't trust that détente is used by the Iranians for positive outcomes. He feels, and I think he's probably right, that the Iranians use those moments of détente to solidify their position while they're giving all the nice talks and the nice smiles. They solidify their position on the ground in the region, and Mohammed bin Salman feels that the Saudis have been had several times by the Iranians like that.
Yes, sir.
I argue as the Foundation Middle East Peace. Two questions related. One, Iraq had been known as the guardian of the gate, the guardian of the Eastern Gate. There is much changed circumstance now, but are the Saudis making any serious efforts to try to reduce Iranian influence in Iraq, which would be a very tough thing to do? And the other thing, are the Saudis looking at certain kinds of cooperation with Israel in the context of their contest, so to speak, or their difficulties with Iran? Thank you.
The Saudis have tried to make inroads in Iraq to counter Iranian influence there, but the Saudis are not very good at managing allies and managing friends. They don't have proxy militias the way the Iranians do. So I think it's much harder. If you remember, they invited Muqtada Sadr, and he went to Riyadh, and that was one effort to try to undermine the Iranian role in Iraq. But I just don't think they're very good at it. They don't manage the chessboard in the same way that the Iranians do. Whatever you think of the Iranian policies and the consequences and the devastation that takes place in countries like Syria because of Iranian actions, they're very good at managing the chessboard, and they're very good at keeping their allies close and very good at running their network of proxy militias. On the second question, there are, and I think, David, you probably know more about this, what's happening behind the scenes between, potential talks informally between Saudis and Israelis. The Emiratis were in the room when President Trump announced his Middle East peace plan. If I'm not mistaken, the Israelis were there. There were some talks also in December. I think the Gulf countries are mostly concerned, especially Saudi Arabia, mostly concerned about Iran today, and they see Israel as an unspoken ally in that camp. So they're also therefore very keen to stay on Trump's good side, and because they want to continue to have the administration put pressure on Iran. And so that's also why you'll see them only giving, statements rejecting the Middle East peace plan that President Trump put forward, but they're not actually going to do anything about it because they want to stay in President Trump's good graces.
So we have time for one more quick question. This gentleman here, and do keep it quick because I promised we'll wind up in the next minute or so.
John Abinator, American Task Force for Lebanon. Kim, how do you see the Iranian-Saudi relationship playing out in Lebanon?
I think the Saudis have, it looks to me like they've given up on Lebanon. That's another place where I think they played their cards very badly. I think they throw a lot of money they have around. They have a checkbook diplomacy approach that doesn't pay off. And then they get very frustrated when their allies don't do what is expected of them. The difference between Iran and Saudi Arabia is that groups like Hezbollah or groups like the militias in Iraq really answer to the supreme leader. They answer to central command in Iran. Saudi allies aren't run like that. They don't answer to the king necessarily. They may cash a check and they feel some loyalty, but they don't answer to that hierarchy in the same way. And I think that the episode where Saad Hariri was forcibly invited to the kingdom in November of 2017 was very damaging to Saudi Arabia's standing in the country, and Hezbollah capitalized on that. And I think that unfortunately for Lebanon, it means that there's going to be continued unrest in the country. We're seeing now the protests in Lebanon that continue, even though we have a new cabinet. But it does look like at the moment, Iran and its allies and its friends, and they don't include only Hezbollah, but also the president, Michel Aoun, have the upper hand. And it's a little bit unclear to me what the Saudis' next move is in Lebanon.
So with apologies to others who may have questions, I want to bring this to a close, invite everyone to purchase a copy of Kim's superb book. And she's going to be signing books. They're 30% off. You can buy one as a gift for a friend. And also ask everybody to join me in thanking Kim for such a good book.
I knew she had a few drinks. She sounded like it.
Wait a minute. This is different.
used to. I'm just gonna do one item. Go low, do all that kind of stuff. Yep, it's restored. My dog won't do it. She got a heater meal. That's restored. I will be doing a I'm going to show you how I use my family and feed the homeless. I'm not going to try to do full meals like I used to. I don't have to feed nobody because I'm not trying to feed nobody. Because it's just overwhelming trying to do a full meal online. Like a turkey. It's almost impossible. They give it out turkey and ham. Cincinnati right now. And I'm not closing the camera and coming back and all of that. And I'm not going to rush and show you this beautiful hair done. I see that a lot. Okay. And I'm not going to do it. I'll show you. So just stay tuned. It's coming. It is coming. It is coming. I've just been focusing more on my personal life and then working on some other things with social media too. So I put little into that. I put more into what I'm benefit from. Okay? The things that's really gonna take it. You gotta put your priorities in. YouTube ain't gonna give me the bag to take to the bank. Okay? No. Pennies. No. These pennies, she got her page got terminated, and she back over there for them pennies. Things that make you sick. And still using the homeless. Back over here for them, she misses them pennies. I'm gonna show y'all that here. This is was over there to show y'all that. I am actually tired, but I'm on overload, so I can't go to sleep. Got a full plate tomorrow. Kind of excited because the numbers will be going over the numbers of the total loss of the foundation of my house, the house itself, and the contents. So I'm excited about that to see what they got there. So that's another thing I think I won't overload about. But that's okay too. Anybody notice? There's no more YouTube page, so the security system is down. We don't even hear the security system going off no more. Because she's a boho. She don't even have real TV. She watch motherfucking Andy Griffin and Leave It to Beaver and shit. You hear me? It's a boho broke hoe that uses homeless funds to support her wigs, her drinking, her eating at restaurants every day habit. This bitch, I'm waiting on this meal to pull back up. This is a free store meal. Should be make sure. Is them frozen meal you offer, dude? So, me and dude is going to do lunch. What else you do? So I'm excited about that. Getting closer and closer and closer. Getting closer and closer and closer. Yeah, I just don't know. Then I got some information I'm waiting on Friday. Some more good information. So I'm excited Friday. By the end of the day, I should be able to know what's going on and I'll be shit. So just pray that all these things that's in the fire, that they all come out of the favor. So far, a lot of this in my favor, which has been a good thing. That's why I say I can't get on there acting and proving stuff
down and hitting Dino Brandy. She can get paid for a farm.